Hi, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this is the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
The Call to the Brewman's Bottle.
So we're back again. Sorry it's a little bit late. I know it's like, Josh, you just said you're going to put it out Tuesday night, and it's Wednesday afternoon. We're just sitting down to record. But things happen, and here we are again. I just wanted to start off and say to everybody that this is really becoming something that's really fun to sit down and have a chat with you guys. And I know I'm speaking for myself and Matt that we really just want to thank everybody that's coming. We're starting to get some feedback on the YouTube channel, and we really want to get to all the different things that everybody talks about, and we want more and more and more. So just keep coming back and keep hitting us up, and we'll dive into a whole bunch of different things, and you will have a little bit more of a say on what we talk about if you get on that YouTube and you leave us a comment. So to kick everything off, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the Arkham Knight discussion that we had. We really came out and beat up the idea that this DLC that they're going to be putting out is a really negative thing, at least from my perspective. And we had a conversation with a few of our friends about how they don't necessarily see it that way. It might not necessarily be so negative, because games have been putting out DLC for a really long time.
Big games like Call of Duty.
Yeah, and they're putting out map packs and this and that and the other, and they see it more that Arkham Knight is giving you the opportunity to come in early and say, I'm going to buy all your DLC for the year. I'm not necessarily against the idea of going ahead and giving your DLC a package deal and saying you can get all of our DLC. But when it comes to the specific happening with Arkham Knight, it is bothersome to me because it feels like they're saying we're going to put out a game and we're going to tease you on all the DLC that we're going to have. And if you don't go ahead and jump in and spend the full $100, we're going to let you know of how much of our game that you're missing out on. And this gets me on a personal note because I think games in general are selling, and they're not doing so much making.
I was actually fixing to ask you, is it troublesome to you that it's a sale tactic?
I think that's one of the big deals, is that games from my childhood didn't have to sell me the game. There are many times that I picked up a game because the picture was cool and played it, and I love it. And I loved the game for a really long time. Now, I'm not saying that as a 26-year-old man, I want to go around and buy games or movies because the picture looks cool. But I am saying that I don't want it to become more about the market than it is about the game. It's very important to me that a developer is into making a game for the integrity of the entire process for the gamer, for the person that's sitting down and having a good time by themselves or with their friends playing this game. I think that if these marketing tactics become the focus, then that's going to be a real big problem. I wanted to bring a little bit of light onto my opinion there because I get really vehemently aggressive when it comes to my video games. They're very important to me. But I do see the goodness in the plethora of DLC that can come out for video games. I definitely want to bring light to the fact that some of my favorite video games have only gotten better from DLC.
That's true.
I can say Skyrim got wonderful with the DLC. Oblivion got wonderful with the DLC. I've played plenty of map packs and stuff that have
shooters are almost required to have them.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot to add to the game from buying it. But I think that needs to come after the game has been established. After the game comes out and you've got a bunch of people playing and having a good time, then it's important to continue giving those people more good content. But to sell on the content that you're going to make, I think, is a bad practice for us as the gamers in the end, because you can build us up and let us down. And that's a real big problem, because I think there are people who have been chased away from following new games because of that. We've also been asked a lot about, talking about spending money on games and stuff like that, about the free-to-play atmosphere in some games. Particularly, I was asked about RuneScape. I can go ahead and say I started MMOs when this concept was very, very new. And I didn't fully understand it as a kid, and I was very lucky that I had the opportunity to get on the pay-to-play games. but a lot of kids played this game called RuneScape.
A lot.
A lot. And RuneScape was a really cool thing because it was, if I remember right, it was browser-based. There was very low system requirements. And you could just throw down on an MMO on your mom's, work computer, basically.
I remember a lot of people in school were adamant on being able to just jump on the computer and play with each other.
Right. And so the thing about RuneScape, I'm going to go ahead and say, is that it's a really cool deal, and it was the first of its kind. But there's a certain aspect of it where there's skills that you can't improve unless you begin to subscribe to this game. And the subscription fee might be lower than most subscription fees, but the fact is if you're going to invest the money in subscribing to a game at all, there are a lot better avenues to go in. And in talking about the free-to-play, there are a lot of video games that if your computer can run it, if your computer can't run it and you love RuneScape, RuneScape is the place to be. But if you have a computer that can run games, the free-to-play landscape takes you into so much more. And I personally like a free-to-play game that's going to let me experience the entirety of my character. And then if I want to spend money, I can spend money to make that character cooler. I know you and I, Matt, had an experience with a game called Neverwinter when it first came out. And I think that is a really good model for a free-to-play game.
I agree.
The in-game content when we played through Neverwinter was really, really lacking. They've added a lot to it as the Dungeons and Dragons landscape grew with 4.0.
It was great really cool up until the in-game content, but like you said, they did upgrade a lot, and all I've heard is positive reviews since then.
Yeah, and the thing about a free-to-play game like Neverwinter versus a free-to-play game like RuneScape is Neverwinter is going to let you play through with a certain select amount of classes. You can buy things to unlock more races, and I think there's a class that you might be able to unlock or two. What it does is it gives you the ability to fully experience a character without dropping money. And then there's a store within the game that if you do so decide that your character is cool enough, then you want to start spending some money, then you can upgrade that character through that store. And there's all number of different things. But the truth of it is if you didn't want to spend a penny on that game, you could play through the entirety of that game. And when you're looking for a free-to-play game, that's what I think you want to look for. And anytime that you're finding yourself out there saying, I don't want to spend any money, but I want to download a new game, take the time to read and find out if you're going to have to pay to experience a large part of the content. I don't know about you, Matt. The free-to-play FPS style MMO PlanetSide 2 as well is a really good model where you can just jump on and download it. It doesn't really make you feel like spending money is really going to help you right off the bat. What feels like is going to help you is get out there and kill people. There are also some MMOs out there that are emulators, that are other games like I talked about in, I believe, the first episode. I was on a emulator for old school EverQuest called Project 1999. And in going through the internet and trying to find different emulators, which is also an option for free-to-play, if you're willing to go out there and figure out how to maybe torrent a file, which I don't suggest doing. It's illegal. Don't go do that. You go out and you find these servers that people have built. And we found one. It's called Poca MMO. And this is an idea I think multiple nerd circles have talked about since Pokemon existed. But this is Pokemon Fire Red, basically, with your friends. You make a little avatar in this game that is a little Poke person, and it's a trainer, and you're going through and you're playing through Fire Red. But the trick is that everybody else is also playing through Fire Red and running around beside you. So not only are they just running around beside you, but they're also playing through the game. And so as you're playing through the game and you're building up your Pokedex, they're building up their Pokedex. And if you go into the Pokemon Center and you go upstairs, you can battle each other, and there's a matchmaking system and everything like that as well. You can go through, and as you're doing what you're interested in Pokemon, your friends are also doing that same thing. And if you get a whole group of friends that gets on this Poca MMO and decides to just go, then you can end up trading Pokemon with each other, all just sitting around at your house. And I think Pokemon was a game built for that type of interaction. I think it was ahead of its time with the whole link cable thing. is it's really inconvenient to try to get your friends together and connect your Game Boys together. And I think it was only a matter of time before somebody came along and said, we're going to throw this up online and make an MMO out of it. So speaking of playing with your friends, we've found something on Steam that I think is really cool, and I just stumbled across it, but it's called Fantasy Grounds, and this is basically the tabletop projector that we have talked about, but it's the program behind that type of thing. And so you can just have it on your computer and take it to a table, and if you and your friends all had this program, you could all play in different places even if you wanted to. I did a little bit of reading on it, but Matt, what did you find about all this stuff?
It was first publicized in the back pages of the 4th edition core rulebook. They talked about it a lot, and it eventually died. When it came back, 5th edition picked it up and was bought, I think you said, a couple of weeks ago or something like that.
I know what I read was that on April 7th, they acquired the licenses to actually sell Dungeons & Dragons books for their program.
Right. That includes the D&D Complete Core Class Pack for $50, and the D&D Complete Core Monster Pack for $50. Now, what I have read through these is you get a lot. On the players, you get 328 portraits. You get all customization when it comes to the characters.
Mm.
You get all 12 core classes, the details and features from levels 1 to 20.
All right.
For the DM, on the monster side, you have 273 images to share, hands-on play with the characters.
Now, they've got all the stats and stuff with the monsters, right?
Yes, attitudes, descriptions, everything.
So I also read, because see, it sounds a little bit pricey to me. And, well, Dungeons & Dragons in general, it can be as pricey as you want it to be. You can play with quarters, or you can play with models. You can really go as deep as you want to go. But when you're talking about spending another $50 on an electronic book, that's kind of much. One thing that I did see in a little bit of my reading was that you could buy packs. You didn't have to buy the full book. And that you could get, like, miniature monster packs. So did you ever find anything about the monster packs or anything? Because I know it was talking about it. And maybe if you could get in, because it costs $120 to get 4 copies of this to have you and 3 friends playing together.
Right. Well, the biggest thing is, let's look at the price, and then let's look at the abilities that it has. Fantasy Grounds gives you the flexibility of homebrew games, Pathfinder, and any really tabletop system there is.
So it comes with the rules intact already.
It comes with everything. It's so interactive, Josh, that you can have the ability, the program gives the ability to go to Google, search for any image that you want, pull it into the game, grid it off to whatever size grid, and then be able to insert monsters, items, traps, it doesn't matter. Full description, you can also hot link the monsters as the DM.
Okay.
So what you can do is you can fill out your map, and in each room, you can put a hotkey to where you have a bar that's easier for you. The players would be able to split up to any number of situations, and you can simultaneously interact with them.
So this is basically, the program itself is the player's handbook and DM guide, and then you're buying the supplements to add in your content.
The player's pack is everything that a player needs, period. And then your monster pack is everything that you need for your monsters.
And so this is basically like, you can sit down with this program, and if everyone has it on a computer, then you can play D&D without pen and paper entirely.
Completely. And also, I've only heard good reviews on the dice system. I know that a lot of people that I've played with do not like virtual dice, but this is the first one that I've heard that's got positivity to it.
Yeah, I know a lot of analog gamers have trouble with the idea of randomizers, because when you bring algorithms in, man, you can start bringing in the statistics of what you're doing, and I find it similar to rolling, or to dropping instead of rolling dice. You know, you can get randomizers that you can figure out how it's working. I don't know. I think I'd probably keep my dice in my hand unless we were Skyping a D&D thing, which, speaking of Skype and D&D, this is the thing that if you've got a group that, say, one of your guys is really far away doing what we do, we've had multiple people that we've wanted to have long distance D&D sessions with. this seems like a program that's feasible for the everyman to run a long distance D&D session. I know Skype's gotten a lot better, but I still personally don't know how I feel about Skyping a D&D session.
This also gives the full range of being able to play with people that you moved away from years ago. I mean, the program is so in-depth. It is the closest that you're going to get to playing on the tabletop at this point.
Yeah, the only thing that I want, and this is me just being, a hopeful person, but the only thing I want is a matchmaking system now, so that if I wanted to get that game and play at my computer in my house, I could see somebody that maybe wants to host a session and jump in on that and come in as like a character that walks in for real, so-and-so walked in from the side of the room. Other than that, speaking of our tabletop interests, this is one thing that is a marriage that's needed to happen for a long time, but real recently we got to see a trailer for the Warhammer Fantasy Total War game that's going to come out. If none of you have looked up this trailer, just type in Warhammer Total War and check out the Warhammer Fantasy trailer for their Total War game. This game looks awesome. If you don't know anything about the Total War games, let me break it down just a little bit for you. This is an RTS that gives you huge armies like you envision in your head when you think of the Crusades or when you think of Warhammer Fantasy or whatever. And then they give you the strategic outlook of being the general that's sending all the troops in and doing all that stuff. And what's really cool about this is in Total War, there are hundreds or even thousands of models on the screen at any one time. And that's exactly what Warhammer is supposed to represent. These real huge open war conflicts. And so they're putting out this Total War game. To begin with, I believe they're going to have the Empire and the Orcs, the Dwarves, or the Greenskins rather, the Dwarves, and I think I may have heard, was it
Vampire Counts?
Vampire Counts. I was going to say Skaven, but it's Vampire Counts, 100%. But then they're going to be adding in more and more and more. And see, I hope they don't end up trying to sell us a season pass to Warhammer Total War. But if they put out a bunch more of these races and they give us a really good game that's representative of the tabletop we love, then that's the type of thing where I would continue to buy armies. I would continue to move on and get more of that game. But this particular game, I think Total War and Games Workshop have needed to get together for quite a long time. They both kind of are of one mind in the way that their game is envisioned, and that trailer in its own right definitely makes it look very Warhammer, and it's going to be a lot of fun to check that game out.
The last Warhammer fantasy games that were put out were fun, RTS-wise.
Right, I've definitely tried out Mark of Chaos. That was a real cool rendition of the way the tabletop plays, where you're picking your army and you're building up the points, and you're taking however many points however you wanted to spend them against your enemy, which is the way that the strategy of Warhammer is laid out. And I think Warhammer is unique in that it utilizes that point system to really make you think heavily about how you're going to play the game. Like I've said in the past, I'm not the most old school of Warhammer players, but I've got enough experience to know that it's a lot to really wrap your head around when you're trying to build that army that's going to be able to survive against everybody. So talking about this giant open field warfare, one of the coolest things that I think is happening in the world right now, and this is me getting my nerd on, is that we referenced in the last episode that they were doing Armored Knight MMA. Now, that's really, really cool and all. And Matt and myself have known about the live steel full armored knight combat for quite a little while now. We got to check out some videos because we're friends with a fella on Facebook that's a part of all of it. And there's also been some videos being shared because of the attention that the MMA style fighting got. But there was a tournament in Poland just recently where they're doing 32-man live steel combat, just like we talked about in the last episode. And it's getting some pretty big attention compared to most of the other videos that I've seen. They had a whole bunch of people out watching this. They were chanting and cheering them on. And this is the type of combat that I find the most entertaining, because this is as realistic as it can get. And for those of you that are interested in like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, this type of stuff that they're doing is the same type of stuff that back in the 16th century and stuff like that, when the armored knight was prevalent, when they weren't at war, the knights would keep themselves busy, and that's where jousting came from and things like that. And they would have these melees where people would get out and watch, this knight that was a landowner near them or somebody that was really of note in their area, and they would go and see these people duke it out and do what they were best at doing. And I think it's really awesome that, I've got a friend, or that even anybody would go out and don the armor and participate in one of these really intense melees. It's very entertaining to watch. It's just unlike anything else that you're going to see. And the coolest thing about it, too, is that while I'm sure people are out there getting hurt, nobody's out there really dying. It's all people out there going out to put themselves against each other physically, which that's really the way of martial arts in general, right? Is that you're supposed to discipline yourself so that you can be physically prepared and mentally prepared. And I think that these people are doing something that's extremely physically taxing. It's extremely entertaining to watch. And if anytime, any of you guys want to go out and just look up any of the full armored knight tournaments now, I'm sure just a short Google search, you're going to figure it out and you'll find some really awesome videos. But I think USA came out on the bottom of the one video that I can found. They didn't win it. But, you can't win them all. And I would think that Polish people would probably have a little bit more experience in armored knight combat, seeing as that's something that was actually going on in their region at one point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in all this talk about combat and stuff, one thing that Matt and I have talked a lot about is the fact that we're LARPers and that we do participate in this foam combat sport called Dagger here. I wanted to go in a little bit and talk a little bit about who we are as fighters. I think everybody has their own identity when they start to take part in one of these games that they start to feel for the first time in the first experiences you have when you start to swing foam with people. As you get in that element and you start to realize, okay, this is where I like to be and this is how I like to fight, you'll really settle on, I would say, 2 or 3 chosen weapon styles that you as an individual want to get good at. And that's where the game, I really feel, begins to take hold. So for me personally, the first fighting style that ever took hold of me was the 2-stick or Florentine or dual wield fighting. Now, it's not something that I kept with for a long time, but it was my first. And in doing that, I began to learn how to swing swords with both of my hands and how to realize that you don't necessarily have to have a strong side or a weak side. What about you, Matt? What was your very first fighting style that you chose?
Single sword.
So you fought with just one sword. And I've always thought that that was a little bit of a risky maneuver, especially for newer people trying to go out onto an open field combat situation with just one sword.
And it was harder because there is no defense, which is why I eventually went to sword and board.
Right. With Florentine, you experience that a lot as well when you're dual wielding. There's no... Your offense and your defense are the same thing. So if you're doing one, you're not doing the other. In talking about the fact that you don't have a defense, that's where I move to what I would say is my chosen fighting style, the one that I like the most, which is sword and shield. I feel like when you're in a fight, in a game like we're in, your ability to stay alive and defend has a lot to do with either where you are or what you have. When you have a shield, you can be a lot more places and survive than if you don't have a shield. There are certain people who aren't confident enough maybe in their single stick or their Florentine that won't even fight you. Now, that's not why I chose the shield, but when it came down to my ability to interact with the fight better, I feel like the shield was my gateway. It said, okay, Josh, you can relax a little bit and see how the fight goes. There are certain fights where I can go in just completely defensively, and yeah, I might be hiding behind my shield, but I can gain my bearing a little bit. And that made me more comfortable as a person in the fight. And that's one thing that you really have to rest on when you're a fighter and you're getting in these games is you have to be comfortable. The second you're not comfortable, the comfortable person is going to come up and beat you every time. Is you have to be okay in knowing that when you're fighting, you can win. And the shield is what gave me the confidence. And then not only that, but as you grow into a fighter over the years using a shield, you begin to learn that that shield is a weapon in its own right. It just can't hurt anybody by the rule set. But I can stick my shield into your elbow so that you can't swing on me beyond my shield, and so on and so forth. So as you went into single stick, where did your fighting styles progress after that?
After single stick, I went sword and board for a long time. The unit I am in requires it for a good reason. Like you said, it is the bread and butter of the game. After that, I started to focus on red. Red is a very tricky style. It's a two-handed longsword or club, as you guys would imagine, that can break shields in 2 hits or go straight through armor.
Right.
The utilization of this is that you can come out of the line and you can nuke on people, and what I mean by that is that you can shatter through their armor with 1 swing instead of 2, which would be required as a normal blue, or you can work alongside another redsman and shatter shields easy. There's a lot of chess gaming when it comes to this field play that we talk about, and red is definitely a support weapon, but it is a straightforward, fierce support weapon. Like you said, comfortability. You have to control the flow of the battle. It's the same thing with Florentine.
Right. So as a redsman, and you talk about chess gaming, and what I think that's trying to communicate is that you're posturing yourself, especially when you have a group of people that are all trying to accomplish a similar goal, which in our game is oftentimes just kill the other team. You have to be able to put your strong side somewhere and make it known that this is where we are and this is the strong area. And I think one thing that Reds do extremely efficiently is move that strong area. If you've got somebody that, when they're standing in a line with their greatsword, is doing work and breaking shields, and then they notice on the other side that there are a lot of shields, they can move and break out and go break shields on the other side. And that mobility of your strong side is what's really, really important, especially if you have people with the smaller reds, whereas a polearm can get stuck in a line a lot of times, and as they're moving around, it's very obvious where they're going to go. A person with a great sword can just pop right out of the line, do some work, and then especially like you, disappear right back into the line. You don't know where they're going to come out again. And I agree entirely. That's one of those things where when you're moving into combat as a redsman, you have to be comfortable. And so I think that's a really good point that you make, that when you first started, you were forced into the sword and board, the sword and shield mentality to build this level of comfortability, and then you moved into other weapon styles.
It helped a lot. I
think that's something important. Anybody that listens to this or anybody that's been into LARPing at any point in their life needs to understand that you're never going to come out and be this awesome presence, that you need to learn where you fit. And one of the best ways to do that in our game is to pick up a shield and see where the places to fit are in the first place and what it's like to be there. Because I've met plenty of guys that have gone years in our game and never picked up a spear, and the first day they did it, they never put it down. They didn't realize that that spear was where they wanted to be. That was the most fun for them. So I think coming in with your sword and board and being forced to stand in the line or being forced to be that solid ground position gives you a good vantage point on the rest of the fight. And it lets you know where the other places are to be.
So speaking of the second styles, what would you consider your third style to be, Josh?
Well, I wouldn't even consider Florentine to be a style of mine anymore. I haven't done it in a long time, but that is what took me. I always wanted to be like Legolas. So really, sword and board would be my primary. And then my secondary is definitely the red as well. But my style of red isn't the same as your style of red, because just as I referenced a minute ago, I use a more polearm style red, whereas I've seen you do the most damage with either a Tetsubo, a short stick that's an Omni blade, or a straight up minimum greatsword.
Right.
I'm more comfortable at the end of a pole personally because of I'm kind of gangly and lanky. And so when I get into a fight with a red, I chicken wing a lot, which is where you'll stick your elbows out. I do a lot of things like that with the minimum red style that really and truly I could unlearn. But anyways, I move toward the long reds and the polearm style reds at about a minimum of a 5.5 to a 6 foot weapon. And what that causes is your ability to stand in the second rank of the line, because I also bring in an element of our game where dagger here you can heal. It's the only style of magic in our game, but it's there, and if utilized correctly, especially with somebody like me, that I can heal you in under 12 seconds. I can get people back into the fight. And not only that, but I can help people know where they should fit into a fight. Because while I have been in the game for a good amount of time, I'm not the greatest fighter, but I've seen 100 different fights, and I've seen how they're going to work out. So I feel like with my polearm, I can do work from the second rank of a formed line while also helping people find their positions who maybe aren't as experienced being in a real thick line fight as I am, or maybe somebody that gets real bad tunnel vision. So I would definitely say that a polearm red is my secondary, maybe even a spear. I do enjoy a spear, though I will say that reds are much more support weapons, where spears come in and they're the DPS, the killers. I've seen spears sink in and get a lot of those gut shots that remove 4 or 5 guys from a line, which results in that team collapsing. And so that machine gun spear style, I think, is a little bit less what I'm going for, where I want to be able to break a shield or two and fall back into my line. Whereas I think a spearman's best place is to step right up and do work till he's dead.
Spear is my third style all the way. It used to be Florentine. That's just not a bite that I want to chew on. It's a little too big for me.
It's a super technical style.
Maybe later on in the game when I consider myself somewhat good. But I picked up Spear, and I'm very natural with it. If anything, it's my favorite style to play with. Like you said, you can fight from the second line. I've been paying attention to certain fighters in the game. Shout out to Batman, especially. He's a great spearman.
Right on.
Where he is a very aggressive spear fighter.
Absolutely.
And I like the degrees of fighting that he does. It's all about angle with him, and his angle game is on cue. And when it comes to a weapon that's 6 to 8 feet long and all with a striking edge of maybe the size of a Coke can, you can get into a lot of spots where, like you said, you're taking down 4 or 5 people in a line and you're not even in the front.
Well, specifically, if you're going to shout out Batman, I'll say that he has a point that anytime he spoke to me about his spear work, he, like you said, he works his angles. When you have an 8-foot-long weapon, it's really difficult to fight the person directly in front of you, especially if they're looking at you trying to fight you as well. They'll run up that spear. This is a guy that'll walk up and intimidate the person in front of him and then kill everybody to his right or left. And then the dude's alone and he's staring at him. And I think that the spear, when you mention working angles like that, it's specifically good to note the people who can step up and do exactly what you're talking about.
So moving on from LARPing, I've been keeping up with a lot of movies lately, and I'm just going to jump right back into them. Let's talk about Suicide Squad again.
Okay. I don't know much about the Suicide Squad at all, other than the fact that that's kind of what they're going for with this new Joker motif that we talked about.
The background to the Suicide Squad is villains that are forced to do stuff that the good guys want, period.
Okay.
The lineup for the rest of the characters was released. Will Smith is Deadshot. Jay Courtney is Captain Boomerang. Cara Delevingne is Enchantress. Margaret Robbie is playing Harley Quinn, which a lot of eyes are on her for her perfection in the role.
Certainly.
Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. Jay Hernandez as El Diablo. He was added later on in the series. Most of these characters were from the 1987 to 1990s series. Okay. Later on in 2011, I believe that's when Harley Quinn and El Diablo was added. Killer Croc is also on the list, but he is the only character out of the entire movie that has never been on the squad.
Okay. So do you know anything about like where does this Suicide Squad come from? Because to be honest, with somebody like me, you just listed off a bunch of villains I've never heard of.
Okay, to give you a breakdown of the Suicide Squad, it's also known as Task Force X. It was originally released under The Brave and the Bold Volume 1 in 1959, and the second one was in Legends 3 in 1987.
Okay.
It's an anti-hero team that is incarcerated supervillains who do stuff for the government so they get their sentences cut.
Oh, all right. Well, that's pretty awesome. So they're making a movie about this group. Do you know if it's going to be like a origin story like that, or is it going to be just like, are you expected to know all of that?
Yeah, you're kind of expected to know all that. I actually don't know half the characters on here personally when it comes to liking and reading about them because, like I said, some of these characters were released in the 80s, some of the characters were released in the 90s, and some of the characters were released about 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Harley Quinn jumped on the scene, for sure.
I also want to make a point that the background reads "Welcome to Belle Reve," which is a reference to Belle Reve Penitentiary.
All right, that sounds really cool, man. So you got any other real big interests? I know Age of Ultron came out. I haven't had a chance to see that. I don't think you have either.
I haven't. My girlfriend said it sucked.
I've heard mixed things. I have a buddy of mine that has said it was awesome and he loved every minute of it, and then I've seen other people just get on and just rag.
So get this. Two of the characters, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, that are from the X-Men series, were not legally allowed to say their names, so they called them the twins in the movie.
Okay, so like oh wow, that's shady.
Yeah, it's very shady, and it killed a lot of it. That I'll say killed a good chunk of some of the buzz. Another thing is the movie that they're working up to is the Civil War, where Captain America and Iron Man fight each other.
That sounds awesome.
Speaking of that, Martin Freeman was just announced on the 5th to be part of the Captain America Civil War. But going back to that,
Martin Freeman, who's Martin Freeman?
The guy that plays Bilbo.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
So, like I said, that was a problem. Another problem that I was told about was the fact, like I said, Captain America and Iron Man, the way that they're building up the tension in between them is wrong.
Okay.
Ultron acted wonky. The love scene, if you want to call that quote-unquote, between Black Widow and the Hulk was ridiculous.
What? Okay.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
so
apparently she uses... Go ahead. What
I'm
were you
just
going to
go ahead and say, because I can come out with a lot of hate before I'll ever see a movie, and I want to table this until I see this movie, because I am about ready to just erupt with all of this frustration. But please continue about this Hulk.
They use Black Widow in the movies to calm him down.
Oh.
Period. And it's a scene where apparently they touch each other, and that calms his emotions, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous.
But I thought that he was always angry, and so it wasn't a calm down thing anymore. I thought it was a thing like the Hulk at this point could do what he needed to do.
Yes, and they made it even worse by apparently later in the movie. Spoilers, guys, by the way.
Oh, all day spoilers on the Bruman's bottle, man.
She's talking to him, and she does this whole classic, I know this guy that I like, and she describes the Hulk.
Oh.
Which was real cheesy for a lot of people.
Yeah. That was cheesy for me hearing you say it.
So, me saying all this bad stuff, go ahead and tell me the good stuff that you heard about the movie at least.
Dude, I heard it was awesome on a Facebook post by like maybe 2 people. That's all it said. I did not go into conversations with them about it. They just came out and said it was good. So I will go ahead and say, from my perspective, this sounds like one of those movies where if you're really into the source material, you're probably not going to dig it. But then again, one of the guys that said he really liked it is one of the biggest comic book fans I know. So I don't know. So it's one of those things I want to see.
It depends on how anal, I guess, you are to a certain subject.
I want to see the movie, and if it comes off as charming in some of these cheesy points, then somebody like me is going to like it anyways. Okay. And there are movies like that I like anyways, even though they're known to be terrible movies. Don't get me started on Waterworld. Don't get me started on Postman.
Kevin Costner.
I like Kevin Costner movies. If you want to hate me for that, that's your business, but I do like them. But no, one thing that you showed me along the movie conversation a little bit, it's not so much comic books, but man, you showed me this thing. It's a trailer that came out. It's called Mr. Holmes. It's a Sherlock Holmes, like, throwback, or not throwback, but like a post, like when he's an old man. And
okay, so Ian McKellen plays in this. He plays as Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
It's based off the book A Slight Trick of the Mind. And the book is a tale of Sherlock Holmes when he's old and unable to walk without a cane, and as he's losing his mind, basically, he's losing his thoughts, he's losing the past itself.
So he's becoming dementia.
He's basically Alzheimer's dementia.
Yeah.
So what he does is this farmhand boy that works there, he decides to leave the legend of Sherlock Holmes with this boy by teaching him day by day, orally, his life.
That's really cool, man. I've never really been a huge Sherlock Holmes guy. I dug the movie, like the Robert Downey Jr. thing. I thought that was a pretty neat little quippy deal that they did with the old book that, you know, some of the people I've known have really been into, but I've never really been bit by that bug. But this modern take on Sherlock Holmes and all the different things that they're coming out with about him, I've definitely been on board for.
The one with what's his name, Cumberbunch and Martin Freeman is amazing. That's the modern one from Britain and BBC. And
absolutely,
I watched all of it in 1 week. I couldn't get off of it.
Okay, well, I probably ought to get down on that. Man, you knocked that out. I didn't even know.
Speaking of movies, on the 4th, May the 4th revealed that Gwendolyn Christie, the girl that plays Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones, is playing Captain Phasma in Star Wars, a member of the First Order.
Right?
Yes. Well, it's a member of the First Order, which basically is equivalent of the evil empire that Luke and Han and Chewbacca and Princess Leia fought in Return of the Jedi.
Okay, so this First Order, it would be like the
like a
Empire's equivalent of the Jedi Academy. It's the Sith Academy.
Like the Super Trooper per se.
Oh, okay. Well, that is really, really cool. I want to go ahead and say that I think Brienne of Tarth looks like a Star Wars character, not in a bad way. She looks like she comes from that universe of
the way she military carries herself.
The spacefaring people, where she's tall. I've seen pictures of her in dresses. If you've only seen her in Game of Thrones, you're shortchanging yourself. She looks really elegant in some of the things that she's got. She looks like a space woman to a certain degree, like she's been created. When it comes to the Star Wars look, I think Star Wars kind of has this look. You're either from a well-to-do area, and it's pretty obvious you're from a well-to-do area, or you're from the slums, when it's equally obvious that you're from the slums. And so, I don't know. I think that she fits in there. I really like that, and I really like that she's going to do the bad guy thing, because I think that her role in Game of Thrones is really good for her. But I don't know, part of me thinks she looks like a bad guy. And I have the whole time. Even though, as one of my favorite characters from the books.
Like, you're just like, just looking at her, you're like, she could play a good bad guy.
The first time you ever saw Palpatine in the old Star Wars, you knew that dude was bad.
Yeah, true. He carried himself like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's that kind of thing. I think she could be the next Bond villain. Even though Bond villains aren't usually women. But I think she's got that feel about her that she could be villainous and threatening. And I mean, maybe that's because I've seen her kick so much ass in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, I mean, she did beat the Hound.
Well, yeah, and it was intense. But so that's really, really cool. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm really looking forward to the new Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fanatic. I didn't even realize when I was a kid quite how into Star Wars I was going to become. But with the different things that I've heard about this particular movie, some of the people who are giving it props. Kevin Smith gave this movie props at one point, dude, and said that...
Good job, Disney.
Oh my gosh. I really hope they do it right, and it feels like they're doing it right. And I even as someone that I can say I enjoyed the first 3 Star Wars to a certain degree, I feel like this one's going to get all of us. You're not only going to have to partially enjoy this Star Wars. I think this is going to hit right at home, and I'm really, really excited about it. But as you guys are getting to know me, I'm hopeful for everything. So I hope it's really, really good, because it can be, and it seems like it's going to be.
Let me go ahead and also give you the hopeful cherry on top. Kathleen Kennedy, the studio president of Disney, not only announced with Star Wars, but she has officially confirmed that they will also be doing the Indiana Jones as well.
Now, that's really, really awesome, because I think Indiana Jones is something that our generation hadn't really gotten. That archaeologists making it cool to be going out and finding out about history and seeing what's going on, that really loosely fiction kind of deal. Like, this guy exists, but there's no one Indiana Jones. Like, throwing back to James Bond again, there are spies everywhere. Some of them probably drive really well. Some of them probably shoot really well. Some of them probably get the ladies, but they're not all the same dude. There's a lot of Indiana Joneses out there that are out there in the wilderness, going on safari, checking out historical sites, doing archaeological things, but they're not all just like Indiana Jones, but rather Indiana Jones is the coolest elements of all these people in one person.
Yeah, he personifies the adventurer.
Absolutely. And I think without that, I don't know that I would have as much of an adventurous spirit as I do now when it comes to the different fictional characters that I thought were people that were good role models. Because in my life, I had real role models and fictional role models. And hate on me if you want, but those fictional role models definitely affected my life. And I enjoy how Indiana Jones is a really wholesome character to say, you know, when you grow up, if you want to be an archaeologist, that's cool too.
I also want to say something that I messed up on last week, and I'll try to catch myself, guys. I'm so sorry for saying something this rudely, but when I was talking about Battleworld, I did not mean to say Batman in the 1602 series. I meant to say Doctor Strange. So let me go ahead and set that record straight.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I did. It was pointed
right
out.
over my head.
It was pointed out almost immediately that night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got it. I got a text saying, "Were you saying Batman was in that Marvel comic?"
Oh.
So I was like, I guess I did. I had Batman on the mind, dude. We were talking that Joker trash.
Yeah, man. Well, and yet again on that Joker trash, it's more and more comes to light about how that's not even really.
That's not even the case.
Yeah, that's not even.
And
thing.
it's also viewed like in the picture that they released. A lot of people was like, "Where's the Joker? Where's the Joker?" There's a good amount of people that are saying the Joker's the antagonist of this movie, Suicide Squad, which is really cool. Bad guy's going to get another bad guy.
Definitely. Well, the whole thing that I thought was cool about the Suicide Squad, because, I mean, I'd never really heard about him until you brought him up in the conversation about what was going on with the new Joker. And it sounds really cool, and I've heard about things like that where the villains get put in a situation to where it's like, well, if we don't step up, nobody's stepping up, and we won't even get to be villains anymore.
Right, yeah. And we're all going to die, including us, and selfishness is going to push us into this situation.
Some of the superhero comics that I don't like have been redeemed because of that issue. You know, where the villain gets together with the superhero and they are cool to a certain degree. To
fight a greater evil or whatever the case is.
Exactly. I think that's a fun thing to think about, especially for somebody like me that's sipping on so much haterade for superheroes.
Speaking of Joker, Batman 41 releases in June. And this is another spoilers, guys, so if you want to skip the next couple of minutes, I'm going to rattle off about the new comic book. Batman and Joker are both dead. Period. It's been confirmed. That's the truth. In the new Batman 41, many of the familiar Batman characters will be taking on significantly altered roles alongside Gordon. including Alfred, which is missing a hand now. He has a one-handed Alfred.
All right.
So they're changing up a lot of stuff. The writers also included that eventually this will not only affect their take on Batman, but the Justice League comics as well.
Okay. So it just seems to me like a lot of these writers, I don't know if they're new writers or if they're people who've been writing the same comics for a long time, but it seems like a lot of people are killing off the old school guys. Is there a cognitive reason that you could think as a comic book fan that they'd be doing that? Because it's really throwing me as somebody that, like, I just, all I know is the name. Why would they kill off that guy?
When it comes to killing stuff, you kill off the plant to grow more plants. And in that concept, some years back they said, I don't remember, it was the 2000s, I think, that they tried to say that Batman was dead. And he didn't die. He was just removed to give that feeling. Well, this time they really killed him off. And I think it's really cool that they're doing that because Marvel is killing off all of their altered universes and they're smashing stories together. And I'm fine with Batman dying.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fine with someone taking up the mantle. It really gives the fact that Bruce Wayne is not Batman, but the image and the personification of Batman anyone can take up, almost like Zorro.
It's that I was about to get out of my brain. All right, get out, because I was about to say that's something that I have always found cool in characters. That's why Batman has struck a chord with me, like Zorro and different people like that, where it's the mask. It's not the person. It's the idea.
It's the V for Vendetta. Yes, get out of my head,
dude. It's the idea, man, and it is exactly what I think takes me to that area where I can say I really like this. Is that they're communicating that this is a superhero in this comic, but this idea that he feels, you can feel and feel confidence in that idea as well. That the everyman can get out there and make a difference. I think that's the biggest thing that Batman tries to communicate, is that I'm here to clean up the trash, the worst of the worst, but all of you can do your part to make it so that I'm not needed. And I think that that's really cool about Batman. So yeah, that's super awesome. I don't know. I know it looks to me like a lot of these things with the comic books and stuff like that, it's almost as though they want to be able to make new movies. They don't want to keep redoing the same characters. Since I was a kid, they've been making Batman movies.
Yes.
They've been making Batman TV shows and Batman T-shirts and Batman this and Batman that. And I just wondered if they're starting to get old for them as the writers, or if it's something where, like you said, they're going to kill off a plant to make more plants. I mean, but you can still, I don't know. There's a part of me that just feels like there's going to be a regret of not having these characters. It's definitely not going to be the last time we see them.
Yeah, I agree. And, like jumping on the whole Battle World thing for Marvel, apparently they've been working up to this point for the past 30 years.
Wow.
Where these universes are colliding into each other, and then whatever is left and whatever is saved will be what we read about. Yeah. But I really think that's a full backdrop for the actual truth of we need a new fresh coat of paint, period, when it comes to writing and when it comes to art styles.
Well, I definitely feel like there are some genres that aren't tapped into in the current superhero thought processes that they might be wanting to get into. I feel like that, like you were saying, that Marvel's been working towards this universe merge for however long. Marvel in particular, I could see them doing something like that because Marvel's got so many different universes. Hell, at certain points, and I didn't know this until Infinite Crisis, but there's how many different Wonder Women? There's like 4.
And there's several. You've got Savage World.
So it seems to make sense to me that they're going to do that. Is what I'm getting at.
I agree.
Okay, so they're gonna bring it all together, and that makes perfect sense.
And they're gonna get, like I said, they're gonna get rid of the stuff that they're not gonna write about anymore, and they're gonna bring in the stuff that they're gonna continue to write about.
Right. So, guys, I really feel like that's about all we're going to have this week. We really had a light week on all the different things that we did, but I can't reiterate enough that the more you guys get in and talk with us, the more we're going to be able to feel like we're interacting with you.
You're really making our day.
Yeah.
Week by week.
The whole first part of the show, I mean, I went on a whole tear because of how excited I was about the responses that we're getting and stuff like that. So the whole deal here that I guess what I'm trying to get out is that we are really having a good time talking with you guys, and we want you guys to start talking back with us. This being the 4th episode, we're really going to start getting some traction on bringing up the website and getting our podcast onto a feed so that you can get it out on your phone and you can bring it into a lot more areas of your life. So keep an eye out for that coming up in the next few weeks. And just like always, hit the like button if you like what we're doing. Hit that subscribe button to get notifications when we put more out. And until then, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this has been the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.